And people will take evolutionary biology and talk about, make a metaphysical answer that's all about becoming apex predators and dog eat dog kind of stuff and whatever, right? That's actually an important one to address because it's a still very pernicious worldview. Nature's kind of just cruel and optimizing it. Anyone who spent time in nature and watched predation knows that it's pretty fucking cruel. And the things that are the fittest, and the fittest can involve effective cruelty, survive. And so humans, following suit of that, being capable of understanding Darwinian kind of process, should seek to be as fit as they can be, and that's just being part of the natural order of things. And that not, of every species, the weak ones dying and getting cold is actually what strengthens the genetics and drives evolution forward. So that cruelty, the predator usually taking the weak prey out more, is actually what's making the prey better. Because they're getting the weak genes out, and so then the stronger genes come. The slightly faster lion that eats the slow gazelle makes gazelle slower over long periods of time. So ultimately, predatory dynamics, violence, winning, competition is what drives all good things and progress and like that. That's a very classic, very narrow idea that takes one very tiny part of science and tries to blow it up to be the meta frame and then interpret it in a way that people wanted to interpret anyways, to basically justify shit that they wanted to do. I won't say the name, but a couple of the people that are amongst the most powerful people in the world in terms of high finance have basically quoted almost all of this to me verbatim in conversations as how they see the world. And they said, either, like, basically apex predators define the topology of the space. And so either you're the apex predator or somebody else is, but the apex predators are going to be the one who run shit. And if you don't like that, you just won't be one of the ones who run shit. One of the guys said pretty directly, all animals are either predators or prey. And predators don't feel bad when they kill prey. And if you feel bad when the prey humans die, then you just said what kind of animal you are, and that animal doesn't run the world. And of the predators who don't make it to alpha apex, they also aren't the ones whose genes really go and run the world. And if you don't like the way the alpha apex are, it won't make any difference because they'll still be the ones who run the world. You just won't be part of it. And, the same conversation went to other places about why the Holocaust was a good thing for Jews. And because they got the state of Israel and nukes and anti-Semitism became a bad word, and et cetera. Like, thinking about, you can see what that worldview does, right? The worldview makes people that think like that. Those conversations would go to much darker places too. But
can I ask, how did you feel hearing those sorts of concepts come from people who not only can imagine it from an armchair philosophy perspective, but actually have the power to be able to wield it in the real world as well? Was that distressing to hear, to sit down opposite somebody and hear that?
Yeah, super distressing at first. It was something I didn't have a reference frame for, from how I grew up. And that also meant I didn't understand critical things about the world that are important if you actually want to be able to make a difference to things in the world. And so one of the things that I started noticing was how much there are certain psychological dispositions that seek power more than others, and that are also willing to use power in ways that give them more power, including by disempowering everybody else. And that those people have ended up being the people with most power most of the time.
Well, they're the most effective. They're the ones that are prepared to go to the places where other people's sense of empathy or virtue or inner compass or whatever it might be would stop them before that.
Right. So effective at a specific thing, and a specific thing that ends up winning in a natural selection of violence. And so you might have a peaceful culture that is way more effective at producing happy people and producing kind people and living in harmony with the land, but Genghis Khan or Alexander the Great or whatever will come slaughter them and take their space and take their stuff. And so then the memes that go on are the memes that were effective at winning in a natural selection of warfare. It ends up being that that drives an arms race, right? Because then somebody becomes better at war, so somebody else has to get those same weapons plus the counter weapons plus better weapons, and eventually you get an exponential curve where it turns into AI-empowered drones and bioweapons and et cetera, and it's actually too big to use any of the weapons safely, and you destroy the whole world. And that's why I work on catastrophic risk, is the pattern of how we have made it through the local issues is actually what's driving the global issues currently. That kind of rivalrous, be the apex predator kind of thing at scale is actually destroying the capability for civilization to keep going on, period.